This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.
Welcome to What's News Dunedin, brought to you by Hazur Kebab, the radio show that spawned from the 19,000 plus strong local OT post in Dunedin What's News Facebook group. The group has been putting back in the social media since 2020 with respect for adult debate and a sense of humour. I'm your host Richard Knights. On today's show, we talked to our wonderful guest Rosemary Penwarden, grandmother and activist, who were telling us a bit more about themselves and what they do, as well as helping us look back at the posts that have generated the most interactions on the past 7 days on the What's News Dunedin Facebook group. Those posts this week are the government's proposal to change petrol tax and road user charges, mobility parks and their use for dropping off people, and plans to drop NCEA and go back to a more traditional method of testing and marking. Welcome, Rosemary.
Thank you, Richard. Lovely to be here.
And you're hot from some protesting this morning. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But before we get started, we do have a what we call our pun of the week. So a pun of the week. So it's on Monday. We have a Pun Day Monday post on the What's News Dunedin Facebook group, and then the best pun, and that's simply marked by whoever gets the most laugh and reacts on the page, on their comment, gets brought to the show on the Friday, and we get to see whether the joke comes off the page and comes out into the spoken world, and whether it still gets a laugh. So this was the pun of the week for this week. A friend of mine taught his dog how to play the trumpet on the London Underground. He went from barking to tooting in just under an hour. See, I like jokes like that. It's like proper dad jokes. It was a friend of the show, Connor Marshall, I think was his joke for the week. But what we also do, when we start, we have 3 pop questions, right? So these are the questions that I ask every single guest that comes through, and it gives our listeners the ability to get under the hood of Rosemary, all right, and find out exactly what makes you tick, just with 3 simple questions, right?
Oh, cool!
I know, right? It's serious stuff, right? And I've had a psychologist on the show once before, and whilst they couldn't give it the official thumbs up. I thought that they were pretty impressed with my work, to be fair. Mm-hmm. So, first question.
All right, can I first say I used to live in Barking.
Barking, not far from where I used to live, actually.
My favourite pub was the Spotted Dog, just around the corner from the railway station.
Fantastic. Yeah. I used to do a lot of. I used to sell cigarettes up and down Barking Road.
Oh my goodness! That
was my first ever job in the UK. I was selling cigarettes to all the corner shops.
Fantastic.
in the East End of London. So,
yeah. Well, I lasted 2 weeks in a pub behind a bar.
Right. Couldn't do it.
I didn't understand what they were saying to me. It just did not work.
I used to love my bar work. So anyway, let's go with the 3 pop questions, right. And that's fine. And we won't hold it against you that you used to live in Barking.
Okay.
Promise.
Thank you.
Cream teas. You know, we have a scone and you have jam and you have cream. What goes on first, the jam or the cream?
Mm-hmm. It's the jam, of course.
Thank God for that, Rosemary, because that is the one question you can get wrong on my show. But that's because if you put the cream on first, like, how are you spreading the jam?
That's ridiculous.
It's just silly, isn't it? It's just exactly. So pressure's off from this point forward because there's no other questions you can get wrong on my show. It's as simple as that. Second question: who is your favourite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle?
I do not have a favourite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle because I am 66 years old. They're out of my scope.
Oh, well, they're all named after Renaissance painters, right? So you've got Leonardo, Raphael, Donatello, and Michelangelo. And then you've got a giant rat called Master Splinter. And like as I say, there's no wrong answers with this one. So you can just pick any one that you like.
Well, let's go Raphael.
It's a good choice. I choose Raphael every time because it's got an R. Richard, R. Raphael.
Rosemary.
It's the perfect option for you and I. So now the third question is a thinker, right? So think about this one. Would you rather be able to take back anything you say, or hear any conversation that's about you?
That's a kind of weird question, Richard, because you mean take back something I said because I didn't like what I said?
For whatever reason, any reason.
Or hear a conversation about me?
Or hear a conversation about you. You've got one of those 2 choices.
No, I'm usually pretty careful about what I say. I never want to take back what I've said.
Yeah.
I don't mind what people say about me. I'm at that age, right?
Yep.
People can think what they like. I know where I'm going. I know what matters. I know what I care about.
So you'd go with hear what people say about you, hear every conversation, or
the
other one, because you're not taking back anything anyway. So it's like a power that you could have that you'd never use.
Am I allowed to say neither?
Well, I can't force you to give an answer.
I'm going to say neither.
Yeah, see, I struggle with this one too, right? Because I'm like you. I'm very careful that the things that I say, I tend to stand behind. It's very rare that I would say something that I would feel the need to retract, either instantly or even long time. But at the same time, whilst I am again quite confident about myself, and I don't really care too much what people say about me. I think knowing what some people say about me, because I have got under the skin of some people in my life, and perhaps you have too, doing the things that you do, I'm not sure I want to hear those people say stuff about me, because whilst I wouldn't necessarily give it much credence, I think I perhaps it might upset me a little bit, if that makes sense. So I'm like you. I'd probably just go with the first one, because I don't have to worry about taking anything back anyway.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I don't think I've given you a very good response to that one.
It doesn't matter. This gets under the hood of Rosemary. This is like, so at the end of the day, your answer is your answer.
Okay.
It's not my answer, right?
Okay.
But I always try and answer the same questions, right?
Yeah.
So that's just a fun bit to start off with, just to ease you into the show. And it's all about fun, to be fair. Like, none of this is interrogative journalism by any stretch of imagination. It's just me being nosy, right? But we're going to talk about the 3 topics of the week. So these are the 3 things that have come up most on the What's News Dunedin Facebook group and have had the most interaction and kind of conversation over the last week. One of those, which has had quite a lot of conversation, is the government's proposal to change petrol tax or potentially remove petrol tax on the cost of petrol and then charge everyone road user charges very much like they do for diesel motorists and other sort of heavy trucks and all those kind of bits and pieces. They seem to think they can do it easier and simpler and have some kind of way of getting your mileage, which worries me ever so slightly, in the sense that how they're intending to do that, who's paying for that, rather than the system. I have an EV right now. So before I had my EV, I had a diesel. They call them trucks here. It's like 7-seater, like a SUV type, 4x4. So I always had to buy in advance road user charges. Now, it's one of the hardest things to budget for, because every time you went and bought one, it doesn't matter if you buy 1,000 kilometres, which meant you had to buy lots and lots and lots and lots, or whether you buy 10,000 kilometres, you still had to pay an admin fee. So if you bought lots and lots and lots of little ones, it cost you more because you had an admin fee that ran. So I used to try and do like 10,000 at a time, but that meant I had to find $700 and something, right, in one hit suddenly, because I hadn't kept a track on my, because that label sits facing away from you on the windscreen so that everyone else can see it, and the speeder sits facing you, and you don't like consciously clock it. So I bought my last lot at 140,000 kilometres. Now and I'm getting to 150,000. I better start saving some money and putting it aside to pay my $700. It was really hard, and I am in a privileged position where I've never really had to struggle for money either. I've been, touch wood, very, very fortunate in that regard. But finding $700 just to suddenly keep a label on the front of my car that kept me legal was difficult. Now, what they're suggesting is that everyone now does this in some way, shape, or form. So they're taking it out of that, putting the petrol in the car, and you're paying your little 70 cents per litre. So you're paying little bits. They're now looking at front loading that and making that a monthly bill. I look at that and say, well, forget the fact that they've also got to add the extra costs of the technology that might be able to monitor this or whatever, or the administration of this. You're now taking a trickle charge and making it a one-off charge for what will now be our most financially vulnerable people.
Absolutely. So, of course, what they're doing is gifting their fossil fuel lobby enablers and funders a little gift.
Yeah, absolutely.
At our expense. That's what they're doing. It's ridiculous. It's going to cost everybody more money. It's another disincentive for you and me who both have UVs.
Yeah.
And it's all the fossil fuel big car owners who will just be able to go, yeah, on our side. But it's going to be annoying for them as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's annoying for everybody.
And the fact that they might be able to track you, like the GP. I mean, people say, oh, they're already doing it in trucks and lorries and stuff like that. But that's business, right?
Yeah.
That's a business, right? And if you're driving a big truck or truck and trailer and you're driving from point A to point B, your business already knows you're doing that, right? Mm-hmm. But also your business is already charging whoever you're doing that cartage for, they're charging that onto someone else. So that cost of that's a cost of business, right? Mm-hmm. Which they pass on and they make profit, right? So even after paying for their road user charges, they make money.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You and I don't. You and I make zero money from driving our vehicles, right?
Yeah.
And it's getting harder and harder, and the cost of fuel is going up and up and up. And whilst I would love to see everyone transition away from fossil fuels, I understand that actually what you've got is a situation where the cheapest vehicle to run might be a 1998 Toyota Corolla that's like done up 260,000 Ks and they're barely keeping it on the road. They can barely afford the WAFs for it. But they need that option because, let's face it, our public transport system isn't good enough for them to ditch their motor vehicle.
No. And a lot of low-income people, actually, Richard, they do work odd hours. They work nights. They work, evenings or early mornings cleaning, and there's no public transport at all at that time.
No, exactly.
So they need their old dangers to get around it.
They do, and then to be told that instead of that, I mean, we all need to pay for our contribution to the roads. That bit I fully understand. But when you're turning around and saying to me that now that poor person, I don't mean poor in the sense of financially poor. I just mean like that, the poor individual is having to now trying to budget for another monthly bill that might come through, and they also might have monitoring GPS software in their car to let the world know, the government know exactly where we are. Not that I care that the government knows where I am. And people say, well, you've got your phone on you. Yeah, that's fine, but I choose to take my phone with me everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? That I can choose to leave my phone at home. But if I drive in my car, I can't choose to leave that. And there's nothing I do in my daily life that I would consider to be illegal or against the law or anything like that. But I still don't want the government knowing that I went from here to there to there to here to come back home.
No, it's you're being watched, right?
Absolutely.
We don't need that.
No, absolutely.
No, nobody needs that.
Because if you want to track down my criminal behaviour, if I have any, you can use my phone because actually I've told you I've already got my phone, right? But it feels very intrusive.
Yes,
as a system.
I don't think it's a smart move at all. But then there's not a lot I've seen recently from this government that I would call smart. I would call it regressive.
Regressive and racist is how I've been
so
describing
racist.
it for weeks and weeks and weeks and months, in fact. But one of the things that they do in the UK is they have the taxes everywhere, right? So I would rather see diesel have tax included so that it cost more at the pump so I could pay a little bit then it was hard work paying that much. I come from somewhere where that was the way they did it, and then people say, well, what about farm use and this use, and they had something called red diesel in the UK, right, which is basically diesel with a little bit of dye in it, so you could tell the difference if you had to, right? Just by looking in the tank going, you're using the wrong diesel, you're in trouble if people try to cheat the system. But that was the diesel that was delivered to tanks on farms and tanks on at marine docks and all those kind of things that didn't have the tax on it. Because the people that are using that diesel, the diesel in those environments, they don't go to a forecourt and fill their tractor up.
No.
They actually have tanks on
the
site,
farm. Yeah.
which get filled up whenever. All you do is you fill it up with diesel that has no tax on it. They don't pay any tax.
Yeah.
They fill up their vehicles, they fill up their quad bikes, they fill up whatever they're doing, and the generators, everything they do. But because it's for commercial use, they don't pay any tax. But the guy that fills up his diesel Pathfinder like me, pays the tax at the pump. It's actually a far easier system. And the beauty of that being is that the petrol companies are the ones that do all the administration.
Yes.
Because they go, well, we've sold 4 litres and we owe you 70 cents a litre, so we owe you $2.80. So I did this math there. $2. I had to think for a second. I thought, if I get this wrong, I'm in trouble. I'm going home and then I sit down. We're doing maths homework. They $2.08 for those 4 litres, and that gets passed to the government. There's no administration in that at all.
And the government's just getting it for very little administration. It's
exactly
now that I don't know. It's going to cost them more.
Yeah,
and it's cost us more.
And everyone's going, well, what about the people who use chainsaws? Oh, well, come on, seriously, the amount of petrol used in a chainsaw, right? You've probably funded that half a centimetre outside the front of your house on that road. That's literally, you're worried about that. Genuinely, come on,
get a battery one.
Your lawnmower, exactly. I'm with you. I think we're on the same page there. Now, mobility parks. There's been a couple of articles in the ODT this week where people. First article was someone pulled up at Moana Pool to drop their partner off, and because of someone else that was parked, they couldn't get to the 5-minute parks. So they've pulled into the mobility park to let the person out and got a $750 parking ticket. Right?
How long were they parked there for?
Not very long. But then they've run to the ODT and gone, this is not right. I've got a ticket for parking in this space, right? This morning, there's another one that's just come out where they're talking about the fact that people dropping off people outside the hospital on Great King Street. Someone pulled into a mobility park to let someone out, and then the warden was there and basically said to them, didn't even give them a ticket, actually said to them, this is not somewhere for dropping off. This is actually a park that's set aside for mobility purposes only. And again, they've run to the ODT with their the anger at being at this being the case. Now, this smacks of privilege and entitlement to me, because actually mobility, we're limited by the amount of mobility spaces that we have in this city. They are for a specific purpose, and it doesn't matter if you're taking up 10 seconds or 10 minutes of time. If your vehicle's there, someone that's just driven up to use that space can't use it. Right? And there's a reason why this government, and rightly so, has put the fine up to stop people doing it. And now people are trying to say, well, I was only in it for a sec. It doesn't. No. It's not. It doesn't.
No, it's not yours.
It's not an excuse.
It's not. It's not.
And then when you run to the ODT with your privilege to kind of go, how dare they enforce this rule? How very dare they charge me $750?
No.
But were you parked in the spot? Yes, I was. Do you have a mobility permit? No, I don't.
Then you are in the wrong, and you should not have got there. It doesn't matter how long you were there.
No, exactly.
Yeah,
I'd be embarrassed to take that to the paper.
It is embarrassing. It's socially unacceptable. It should be socially unacceptable.
Absolutely.
But people with mobility problems are discriminated against enough already.
Exactly.
So we don't need to push into their parks, for goodness sake.
I know.
I almost tipped my mother out of a wheelchair on Dunedin footpath once. It was a few years ago, and luckily she didn't fall out. But we've got to look after these people.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness, they have a tough enough life as it is.
It is crazy, and accessibility is something that is so important, right? And at every level, right? Talk about financial access. Talk about the guy that can't afford to get his road user charges, so therefore can't afford to fill his car up and can't afford to go to work. You're making work financially inaccessible to someone with what you're playing at. Same thing here. Like mobility, accessibility is so important, and we don't do it well enough to start off with. And then we've got privileged, entitled people saying, "I was only parked in that space for." I was dropping someone off. That's not the drop-off zone. That's not. There are drop-off zones. There are spaces, right?
They should feel ashamed of themselves.
And the fact of the matter is, if you're in that mobility space, and someone who needs that mobility park gets there and you're in it, and they can't use it, what do? They drive round until it's free, right? Which is what you should have done when you couldn't get into the 5-minute park to do what you were trying to do.
I'm on the same page there,
It's
Richard.
just, it makes me want to scream.
Yeah, and do you know what it's really doing, if you think about it? It's chipping away. If that gap between the privileged people and the ones who require that extra bit to be able to function fully in our democracy, it is chipping away at everybody's democracy, I think. And so, to me, it's back to that same old thing. We've got to reduce inequality in our town, in our city, in our country.
And I know for a fact as well that if that person who was making the complaint about the ticket had been a genuine mobility user, they'd have been making the same noise about someone being in their space, not using it the way they're supposed to use it as well.
True.
That's the irony in these people, and like they should be embarrassed to be going to media. I think in that sense, like you might be annoyed, be angry, but don't do it. Don't do it publicly.
Don't show yourself out to be that person.
You're not showing yourself in a good light. To be completely fair.
No.
Oh well, we're just 2 for 2. We're on the same page. So let's see how we're doing with the plans for the dropping NCA and going back to more traditional methods for testing and marking. I don't know how I feel about this because, and I'll say for why, because I didn't come through this system, right? So I went through a system back in the UK of I was the first year in the UK that did GCSEs. So they'd moved from O levels and A levels to GCSEs and A levels, and I was the first year that did this new General Certificate of Secondary Education, which is what GCSE stands for. So I can even remember that stuff. At least I'm proving the grey matter's still working. And O levels, GCSE, it wouldn't have made the blindest bit of difference to me whether I did one or the other, right? Because generally at school I was reasonably academic.
Right.
So I could sit down in an exam and I could pass an exam. I've always been like that. That's just been that's how I fit in the world, right?
Yeah.
Whereas some people are more, they're more visual learners, they're more this learners, they're more sort of like assessment, type student. I can prove over a year that I can do something, but sit me in a test in an exam and I struggle to necessarily perform as well as I actually that I'm able to, right? So but then coming over here, my children have all gone through NCA. We came over here when our eldest was 15, so they just hit level 1, level 2, level 3, and my children have been through it. And it seems like a reasonable system. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think teaching and learning education comes back to teaching and learning, regardless of the method of actually of how you examined on it. But it feels like a good system. There's a combination of internal assessments, as a combination, so not everything's weighted. I mean, if I don't know if that's still going to be the same under what they're planning. But again, like you use the word regressive, it feels like a very regressive. Let's go back to A, B, C, D, and E, as if by just simply doing that, you've made something better. It doesn't have a lot of thought behind it. But let's because ultimately, I believe they still grade on like a bell curve, in the sense that a certain amount of people are going to fail regardless of how you mark it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit like you. My children also went through NCA. They're both high achievers anyway. My daughter's a primary school teacher, and I wanted to have a good talk to her. But the way it seems to me, and what I worry about with every announcement the government's making, is they're very, very ideologically driven. So they're very much, I would call it regressive. I would call it going backwards. I would like New Zealand to really seriously look at Finland and the way the education system is going in Finland. Teachers over there are treated as some of the most important professionals in the country because they are with our children. And what is more important than a country's children, our country's future population? And so teachers are supported as lifelong learners alongside the kids.
Yeah.
I think NCEA, of course, had its issues, but I think it has been refined over the years.
Yes. As has the GCSE thing. Like the first year I did it, there was you kind of going, maybe that didn't quite work, and they just kind of went, instead of going, right, let's do O levels again, they kind of went, well, let's just make them work. And I think that's a valid part of the process, is to make but don't. Yeah, they didn't suddenly go, we'll just dump it and go back. And the other side for me is when you look at places like Finland, and you've got some of the Scandinavian countries and some of the European countries as well, it's not like we can't look at that and go, take those good bits. That's a good thing. Doesn't quite work for us.
Yeah.
But if we're a smart, sensible country, we go, right, those are the bits that we absolutely know will fit, and we'll take it and tell you what we're doing.
And there's one more thing. There's one more thing. These kids, like, for example, I have an 8-year-old granddaughter, right? She won't reach excuse me, I've been shouting this morning.
Yes.
She won't reach my age until the early 2080s. What's the world going to look like, Richard, when she's 66?
Yeah, wow.
So is our education system even keeping up with what our future is going to look like in the near future?
No, exactly. And if we're talking about taking it backwards, English and maths aren't the be-all and end-all of our education. One of the things I love about the most recent stuff that we are doing right now is that actually people are saying, hey, what is your way of learning? Because actually, when we sit down and we start talking about it, when was the last time you used trigonometry or algebra, or you wrote an essay on the virtues of the Bronte sisters, literary piece from the early 19th century? I get there's a need for spelling. There's a need for, even there's not, to be fair, with AutoCucumber, there's not even a need for spelling anymore, because if you want to mess up your spelling, AutoCucumber will do that for you naturally anyway.
I know. And where's grammar gone? Where's the idea of grammar?
It's the Oxford comma. So again, it's one of those things. It's like actually there are things that can help us. You don't need to be a maths genius. Right? I cannot remember the last time I calculated the square. I used Pythagoras theorem.
Yeah.
I know what it is.
Yeah.
I know that if I want to, I can work out what the length of that hypotenuse is, based on the other two.
That 3, 4, 5 rule is.
Oh, absolutely, I can do it. Right.
Yeah.
But I only do it for fun. Maths is fun, right? But I only do it because like there might be a question in a online or something, and someone's trying to catch you out for trying. I haven't used it in all the time that I've been an adult.
I would like us to rethink as a society. I'd like us to rethink our priorities in education, but not just in education. Of course, in housing. Of course, in that terrible gap that is continually growing between the rich and the poor. But we've got to get our act together before it's too late.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So I think 3 for 3 when it comes to the topics of the week. So the important thing is now we're going to talk about you. Right. So this the pressure's on. But before we do that, we're just going to get a quick word from our wonderful sponsor.
Have you checked out Hazur Kebab yet? It's your go-to for a delicious lunch, a tasty dinner, or anything in between. Order online to save time and pick up some delicious, authentic Turkish cuisine in just minutes. HazurKebabCafe.co.nz. Dine in or take away at 906 George Street.
Are you a kebab fan?
I do like kebabs, yeah.
Have you been to Hazur?
I don't think so.
Top end of George Street, opposite George Street Normal.
I know the one.
Yeah.
Oh, he's great.
He's fantastic.
He's great. I've been going to see him for a long, long time.
He is an amazing human being.
Yes.
He's a friend of mine. I'm very pleased to call him a friend of mine.
He used to have a picture on
Of
the
me?
wall of Olu, not you.
Right,
no,
okay.
Olu Deniz at the bottom of, it's in Turkey.
Oh, yeah.
I was there once, yeah.
Yes. He's not long been in Turkey, but Mustafa, one of the most amazing human beings I've ever been lucky enough to call a friend in my entire life.
Great.
So hopefully he's listening. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. That's okay.
Yeah.
He sponsors the show, so it's
Nice.
entirely up to him whether he wants to listen or not. So we're going to talk about you, and for anyone who doesn't know Rosemary, you've come hot from your latest protest, where you're protesting, and I saw it in the ODT this morning. I was just checking to make sure you hadn't been arrested, because obviously that would have been a very interesting show. Me trying to fill in the gaps while you weren't here, or trying to get you to get your one phone call. Can you imagine? Where's your one phone call? I want to phone What's News Dunedin radio show. Yes. Not my lawyer, not my friends, not my family. I'm going to phone the What's News. I've got to phone Richard to talk on the show. But I made it our mutual friends, Jill and Kelly's responsibility to make sure you didn't get arrested.
They were fantastic. They were watching
fantastic.
me.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I knew they would be. I know they take their responsibility seriously.
Yeah.
So I probably should get them on a show at some point. Now,
Yeah.
you come from the ANZ protest, so and you've done lots of protests. So we're going to talk in its entirety about all of that stuff. But maybe give before we do that, maybe give us a little bit of a 5 minutes Cliff Notes version of Rosemary and how you got from where from a young individual to where you are. I'm not saying you're old. To an older than you were when you were a young individual.
I'm quite old.
We're all getting quite old. And why this stuff has become so important to you.
I reckon it was a real moment of hitting home for me, and it was 2011.
Okay.
And that's quite a while ago now, actually.
14 years.
Yeah.
So I'll do the maths.
You're good.
Didn't need Pythagoras theorem for that one, did I?
No, you did
but
not.
There you go.
So that was the year my first grandchild was born. And I was there at his birth. And it was momentous for me. And more momentous for my daughter. But
Yeah.
it kind of made everything real when I looked at him and I looked at the future. Because just before his birth, Dr. James Hansen had come to Dunedin. I don't know if you were there then, Richard, but
I was here in 2011, but
2011.
I came in 2010 was I first got here.
He came to speak at the university and he filled the lecture theatre. He overflowed people into about 3 or 4 other smaller lecture theatres. And I was in one of the smaller ones, and I was listening to James Hansen, who I think at that time he'd left NASA, but he used to be head of NASA. He was known as the world's top climate scientist. He looked tired. He'd travelled a long way. And a lot of what he said went over my head. It was quite complicated maths. But what struck me about Dr. James Hansen was he was terrified. And he knew better than anyone what was coming. He was terrified of the future, and it made me really perk up. It made me think, oh my goodness, this is real. This stuff is real. And that same year, Jeanette Fitzsimons, who used to be the co-leader of the Green Party, she was doing a little tour of the country, and she spoke also at the university here, talking about Solid Energy, the state-owned coal company, and how they were about to start digging up the Mataura Valley in Southland for lignite, for the dirtiest coal on the planet. And their plans would have pushed New Zealand's emissions up massively. And Jeanette was one of those walking encyclopedias, you know. And it wasn't all the facts and figures that she had that struck me. It was what she said at the end of her talk. Jeanette was a bit older than me, maybe 10 years. And she said, I'm retired from politics now, but I will be doing this for the rest of my life. And I felt like someone just punched me in the stomach at that moment. And, you know, sometimes things hit you so strongly, they're like physical. And I thought, part of me, this little part of me was going, no, I've got so many other things I want to do. But the other part was saying, this is what you will be doing for the rest of your life, Rosemary. And that's what happened. And Jeanette and I worked together until she died at the age of 75 a few years back. She was wearing a Quit Coal T-shirt.
Wow. When
she died. Fonterra Quit Coal. We worked on quite a few campaigns together with Coal Action Network Aotearoa. So yeah, I was like, damn it, I'm going to have to do something about this stuff, because now I've got a grandchild who suddenly became, you know, just so important. And I thought, what matters more? What matters more? Nothing.
No. I agree. I mean, I had a similar. I can't pinpoint quite. I think it's generally having children. Then you kind of realise that actually at some point you're leaving them behind. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's what am I leaving them? What am I leaving them behind with? Mm. Am I leaving them behind with anything that's worth them having?
Yeah.
And what can I do between now and that time when I do leave them behind to ensure that I'm leaving them with the best possible thing that I can? Mm-hmm. And I don't mean an inheritance. I don't mean an education. I mean physically the space in the world where they can actually leave something behind for their children. Right?
Yeah.
You know, and I mean I've got Mokapuna too, so I've got 10-year-old 8-year-old and 3-year-old. I could have that slightly wrong. It could be 9, 7, and 3.
Do your maths.
Pythagoras' theorem is not going to get me out of this one. That'd be completely
Okay.
fair. But anyway, I've got 3 grandkids myself, and I'm hoping to have more at some point in time. And it's about what they end up inheriting as there are so many cliches that you can throw out, and people kind of but there is no planet B, right? That's one of the things that sits with me like really strong. There is no planet B, right? If we don't look after this one, if we don't deal with the stuff that we've got on this one, it's only Elon Musk that's going to Mars, and he can hurry up and get there as far as I'm concerned, and just like turn around, turn his Wi-Fi connection off, and just stay there. Sorry, Elon, we're not friends. But what are our Tamariki, what are our Mokopuni actually getting from us, right? Because we are definitely, in my mind, the most destructive and invasive as a species that we've ever been. Right?
So true.
Because go back to the medieval times, go back to the times before that, go back to the Stone Age. We basically existed to survive and to procreate, pretty much. Now we are literally, since the dawn of the industrial age, we are literally pillaging the planet for I don't know what. I don't know what the answer to that is.
I can tell you the answer, Richard. We have been trained to become little consumers, and for the wealth of a few extremely rich corporations. It's so upside down. It's so inverted. But we've been recolonized. We've been recolonized by money. I think it was Howard Zinn, the late Howard Zinn, who called it the unelected dictatorship of money. We're being ruled by the unelected dictatorship of money. And that kind of brings me back to the ANZ Bank.
Yep.
Why are hundreds of people sitting outside the ANZ Bank today? We beamed in from Dunedin to Otatahi Bank. There were 75 people outside shutting the bank down there. To Pōneke up in Wellington, they were shutting the bank down up there. There are people in Rotorua. There are people in Whakatu, Nelson. And I think there's a few little, there's some protesting going on in New Plymouth at the ANZ. So ANZ is the last bank that has not committed to letting go of fossil fuel investments. So they are helping our biggest coal miner, Bathurst Resources, to dig up the Denniston Plateau. So the Denniston Plateau has been fought over by environmentalists and coal miners for years and years and years. And the coal miners have now been given another go at it, thanks to this government's fast-track legislation.
I've never shook my head so much at a government as I have for this government. And the sooner they're gone, the better. But the damage will be done. Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, Richard. Right now, the people are saying no, we're not going to let them dig up Denniston. And I've got 2 colleagues right now, this very minute, 83 metres up, living in a coal bucket.
Right.
Above the Stockton mine, between the Denniston and the Stockton mine. And so they're up there stopping Bathurst Resources from using that aerial ropeway to take their coal out from Stockton and send it out by ship from Littleton Harbour across to Japan, across to China. So they're holding up business as usual. And what they're saying is, we'll get out of this bucket as soon as you give up the idea of digging up the Denniston Plateau.
Yeah. And nothing but admiration for those people, right? Genuinely. But it shouldn't come back to that, right? It shouldn't come back to, I don't know how many people are in that bucket, right? 2, 10, 2. It shouldn't come back to 2.
One grandma like me. She's a bit younger.
Viva la grandmas, that's all I say. Is like, but it genuinely, it shouldn't come back to two people when the sheer enormity of the science and the smart people and the data and everything supports don't dig that stuff out of the ground, right? Build a wind farm, make solar panels. We don't need it. You don't need to be doing that. You don't need to be pillaging the earth for the resources, the finite resources that it's got. Digging deeper, digging harder, digging whatever. Like you got Shane Bloody Jones trying to tell you they're going to start trawling the bloody seabed. No, it's like the science doesn't support your corporately money-grabbing, narcissistic, self-centered viewpoints. It doesn't.
No.
And whilst there are a number of us and amazing individuals that are standing up and saying that stop, we're going to do something about it. It shouldn't come down to us. It shouldn't come back to us. It should actually be, because the science is already there saying, don't do it. Like, you've literally got a consensus of smart human beings around the world.
Well, we've sort of come to the conclusion, particularly with this government, that there's not much point. There's not much point depending on them and waiting for them to make the right decision. They're not making the right decision. And that is why I'm out on the street as often as I need to be, as often as I can be, saying no. And I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of saying no. And I think what happened to me during my career, I was a union rep in the health industry, and I found that sometimes the most, the strongest thing and the most positive thing you can do is say no. It sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? But that's how you can make positive change, because there's so many parts of the system working against you. For example, would we have weekends if somebody hadn't stood up, if some union members hadn't stood up and say, we need our weekends off?
Yeah.
I was at the hospital for many years working in the laboratory, and my colleagues and I were exhausted because we were working really unsafe hours. Really unsafe, not just for us, but for the patients we were working with. And we fought. And the only way we got change was by becoming as one. We were 99% union membership, and we said no.
Yeah.
And that saved, I think it saved lives.
Well, it would have done.
When you're working in hospital environments, it's life and death.
And then the reward that they get is they were offered 1% or something this week, which they turned down.
That's right.
And again, like, you've got all this corporate greed going on, but they don't want to spend any money.
No,
they don't want to use that money for the betterment of society or to protect our vulnerable or those that have mobility issues that require accessibility. They don't want to do that. They want to line their pockets. They want to gather their wealth together, so when they give something to their Tamariki and Mokopuna, it's got dollar signs against it.
Absolutely. And so, Richard, you might not notice this, but I'm noticing it. My voice is a little hoarse talking to you this afternoon. That's because I've been shouting with mostly young people, a lot of students, not all students. There are other older people as well. There are people who've taken a day off work or come back from retirement, shouting out about that people do have the power. And that's what we've got to remember. But it's only going to work if we work together.
Agreed. I've got some questions for you that sort of popping into my head as we're talking. But before we do, I was going to get another quick word from our wonderful sponsor.
Have you checked out Hazur Kebab yet? It's your go-to for a delicious lunch, a tasty dinner, or anything in between. Order online to save time and pick up some delicious, authentic Turkish cuisine in just minutes. HazurKebabCafe.co.nz. Dine in or take away at 906 George Street.
One of the things that's on my bucket list is to get arrested.
Really?
Yeah, don't ask me why. Like, it's just this whole bad boy image I think I have, which I don't.
I can tell you all about it.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Because one of those things, I do know that you have been arrested. I've never been arrested. I've never been charged with a crime. I've never spent any time inside a courtroom. All right. All of which are on my bucket list, right? Because I say I've just got this kind of leather-clad bad boy image of myself, which doesn't meet reality at any step.
I'm going to put you on my telephone list, mate.
So, how many times have you been arrested?
Well, if you count the times where I've been arrested and then let go at the end of that day,
Yeah.
oh goodness, maybe 6 or 7.
Okay. How many times have you been arrested and held?
And held overnight. Overnight, probably only a couple of times. Yeah.
Okay. When was the last time?
The last time was when I spent 2 weeks at the, what would you say, pleasure of His Majesty.
Yeah.
At Arahata Women's Prison.
Okay. And what was that? What happened? What transpired to get you there?
To get me there. So what I did was I sat on the motorway between Wellington Airport and the city with my hand cemented to State Highway 1.
Right. And I was telling my wife about this before on the way here. They phoned me, so they were listening to the show. So what's the story behind that? Because they went, I hope she was wearing a glove. And I said, I don't think they were, because they just slip you out of the glove and then you're away, aren't you?
Of course.
So unless you cemented the glove to yourself, which then you must know the glove
not going to work, is it?
To cement.
No.
So you were protesting.
So what we began a campaign called Restore Passenger Rail.
Yep.
Because we saw transport as our fastest growing sector in emissions, and it's kind of a low-hanging fruit.
Yes.
It would be really easy for a start to restore public transport, to restore a passenger rail service throughout the country.
Yep.
Make it affordable. I know we've got a bit of tourist trains, but they're not affordable, and they're not designed for ordinary people to travel up and down the country to meet their friends.
No, they're profit-making enterprises, and therefore they're designed to be lots of money.
Absolutely, and Kiwi Rail's been run down for many decades, and we can't just blame the national government. We can blame Labor as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that was our demand: restore passenger rail, and we decided, look, the climate crisis is being ignored, and it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse. I mean, we had Cyclone Gabrielle in the middle of our campaign.
Right.
And those Auckland floods, oh my God, they were awful.
Yeah, we're having one. We're having one in the year. We're having one in 100-year floods every 3-4 years.
That's
here,
right.
Currently.
That's right. And so, of course, I mean, every day you can see disasters around the world. Well, we were back in 2022. We decided we've got to do something that is going to get the attention of not just the government, but ordinary people. And we were in touch with people in Europe and in Canada. And we decided we were going to join up with this A22 network. And you can look that up. It's still going strong. And we shared a lot of tactics, and we decided we're going to sit on Wellington motorways and get the attention of the government and the people. And I tell you what, it worked. If that was our goal, to get the attention, we certainly did. We got a lot of support, believe it or not, particularly, surprisingly, by a lot of the media. But particularly the first year, I guess. But by the time I sat on that highway using cement, it was the first time we'd used cement. We'd used glue, and the police had a little suitcase with acetone and a little paintbrush to get our hands off. They'd figured out what we were doing.
Yep.
But when they came to my cemented hand, the little paintbrush did not work.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So they ended up having to get the fire brigade to chip my hand off the motorway.
Right.
Took a while, actually. It took probably an hour or so to get it off. But, I mean, I actually did a song about it. I did it for love.
Yeah.
It might sound stupid, but I was doing it for love. I was doing it because I feel like I'm at this end of my life and I'm not expendable exactly, but it might as well be me. Who else? Yeah. Anyway, I went to prison. They didn't like, the police were not happy about the cement at all. I think they weren't really happy that they couldn't get my hand off and the fire brigade could.
Right. So it was just basically jealousy. It was pure envy. The fire brigade are the ones that could resolve the situation.
I mean, there I was sitting in the middle of the road saying, "No, police, you move back. This man knows what he's doing.
Right.
He's a fireman." And
So,
anyway, yeah.
In your plan, did you have a plan for getting yourself off the road? Or were you relying on the fact that you were hoping that someone else would figure out how to get you off the road?
Well, if they didn't get me off the road, I would stay there for longer.
Right.
I would hold up the traffic.
Yeah. But did you in your brain was like, well, I'm submitting myself to the road, right? And then if no one can get me off the road, in 5 days' time, I have the solution to get myself off the road?
No.
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 So you literally went there thinking that this could be the last place I sit down.
This could be the last place I sit down. Now, it's not very comfortable being an activist a lot of the time.
No, I wouldn't imagine.
But it's a lot more comfortable than dying from a flash flood from those people who have died in Cyclone Gabrielle, from those people who are dying every day around the world from this out of control climate that we have caused.
Exactly, and then you get the whole. I see it on Facebook all the time, and in various places. You get that climate change denial. You get that. You get people in positions of power saying it doesn't affect us here because our sea is cold. Right?
That's crazy. I'll have to tell you a story. I live out in Waitati, and a couple of years ago, bream, deep sea fish called bream, started washing up on our beaches, and there were hundreds of them, hundreds and hundreds in waves. And I mean, it was lovely for the locals because they could go down and pick up a fish for breakfast.
Exactly.
But it was horrifying what is going on in our oceans. Oh my God.
I know. And marine temperatures are rising. Everything. It's a climate crisis, right? It's a climate emergency. We need to stop talking about climate change. We absolutely do. And our mutual friend Bruce, love him, friend of the show, been on, is wants us to realise that's what it is because it absolutely is, right? And the science supports us doing something about it, right? So we've got the means. It just comes back to the political will. And that appears to be lacking.
And what we seem to be, the problem we have is that most people's careers, their livelihoods, is dependent on things staying the way they are. But unfortunately, it is that business as usual that's killing us.
But we've got the smarts and the science and everything else, and the finances to do it better and smarter. But we're choosing not to. Which it's that ingrained stay the way we are. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But then you look at all the peripheral stuff that this government's happy to break that isn't broken and wants to fix it, like road user charges and NCA changes. When they should actually be going like, leave that the way it is because it's not broke. We don't fix it. But let's fix the bloody climate.
Yeah.
Let's fix the climate. Let's stop them digging up the holes.
Yeah.
Let's stop them drilling for bloody gas and oil that we don't need and we should be moving away from.
Yeah.
Let's put money into bio LPG rather than digging up natural gas and making that as a byproduct. We could be actually generating environmental sustainable and still make money.
So Bathurst Resources, right? They're the biggest coal miner in New Zealand. They're listed on the Australian Stock Exchange, not here, but they They do not even have redundancy packages for their workers. They've got 2 or 3 or maybe 4 more years of coal at Stockton. That is long enough to phase out of coal mining. That is long enough to get their miners who do have transferable skills into new jobs.
Something else. And they're choosing not to.
That's right.
And I've got to stop you. I could sit here and talk to you all bloody day. I genuinely could. But we've run out of time. I knew we would. Thank you very much. You're welcome back on at any time, and we'll finish this conversation with Rosemary Penwarden. You've been fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's a wrap for this week. Thank you for tuning in. I've been Richard Knights, and you've all been wonderful. Remember, if you're looking for a robust, respectful adult debate about all things local and further afield, and a welcoming online community that doesn't take itself too seriously, come and find What's News Dunedin on Facebook and join our fun. On next week's show, we're talking to Damien O'Connor, Labour MP, and we look forward to seeing you next Friday at 12 on OAR FM. And if you want to listen to the show again, or simply share it with your friends, you can find the podcast at oar.org.nz, or even on Spotify or your favourite podcast provider.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.